Hi everyone, this is Elise Dorflinger from Elise'sGenealogyBlog.com, and today we're going to be talking about the basics of organization. These basic principles apply to both paper and digital organization. I picked this topic because it's one of my huge passions, and it's a topic that I'm an expert in. Plus, this is the time of year where every genealogist is thinking about getting organized. I feel like getting organized is a resolution that is very similar to losing weight. A lot of people are looking for a quick fix. It's kind of like when you go on a fad diet and you drop a lot of weight and you're able to fit your skinny jeans for a minute, but then as soon as you go back to your old habits and your old ways of eating and things like that, you gain all the weight right back. And I think with organization, it's the same thing. You know, being organized is not something that you do once and then you're done forever. Being organized is something that you're always working at. And so I think it's something you have to look at as a lifestyle change because it requires a permanent change and it requires some devotion. It's kind of like a huge commitment that you're making, saying that I'm tired of not being able to find stuff. I'm tired of not knowing what I have. I'm tired of wasting my time because I'm doing searches over and over and over again when I've already found whatever I was looking for, but I just didn't know it because I couldn't find it. So getting organized is one of those things that you have to make a commitment to, and it's definitely something that's worth making the commitment. So the key with getting organized is consistency, and that comes both in how you put things away initially, so your initial setup, and how often you decide to put everything away. I believe in keeping things as simple as possible, because simple means I'm more likely to stick with it. The more complicated it is, the more work I have to put into it, etc., I'm just not going to stick with it. The simpler and easier it is, the more likely I'm going to do it. So if we're talking about organizing our ancestor or genealogy information, the way that I figure out how I'm going to divide all my stuff up is by thinking about how I think about my ancestors in a very broad sense. So for me, in my own head, I divide my ancestors up by surname. So each surname has their own category. So my Dorflingers are in one category, my Duggars are in another, my Keplers are in another, my Harneys are in another, my Westons are in another. What else do I have? My Downers are in another, my Brighams are in another. And if you have any of those surnames, you should probably contact me because we might be cousins. Anyway, and then I think about how I think of the details about my ancestors. So the details are going to be how I'm going to subdivide my ancestors. And for me, I think about the details based on couple. So each couple goes into their own subcategory. So really, the best way to figure out what system works for you is to ask yourself those questions. How do I think about my ancestors broadly? And how do I think about the details of my ancestors? Because if you can answer those two questions, you've just set up an entire system. And now, really, all you have left to do is to put in the work of dividing and subdividing all of your stuff, and then putting it away somewhere, whether that away be in a binder or a file folders and a filing cabinet, or digitally somewhere on your hard drive or an external drive or whatever. So let's talk about some other examples about how other people divide up their stuff, just to make sure you really get it. So some other people decide that they're going to divide their stuff up by record type, just because that's how they think about their ancestors. They think of the types of records that they've collected, whether that be death records or census records or birth records or marriage records or land records or whatever. They kind of just, that's how they separate everything. And then how they subdivide everything might be by surname, because that's just how a person thinks of it. And then within each surname, you know, everything's sorted alphabetically by first name, just to make it super easy to find what you're looking for. But these are just examples. And honestly, if you just use the formula of how you think about your ancestors and how you think about the details that go along with those ancestors, then there's so many possibilities, and one of them is definitely going to be a fit for you. There's so many different systems just in those two questions, and you're going to find one that works for you. And if you really think about it, we already have somewhat of an organizational system for our ancestors in our own brains. Each person's brain may organize that information slightly differently, but our brains are already handing us a system, and it kind of is up to us to to decide whether we want to use it or not. But you have to remember, if you spend the time asking yourself these questions and then dividing up your stuff and putting it all away, whatever format that may be, you still have to maintain it. And that requires some long-term effort. So one of the things I really highly recommend is that you schedule a time, either a certain day and time of the week or at a certain time of the day, depending on how often you decide to research. And you decide that's going to be the time that you put everything away. Any loose papers that got out, any loose notes, any new notes or new papers that you've gathered, that you just take that time to put it all away. And if you do this enough times, it's going to become a habit and it's going to become second nature. And I know it sucks at first and it's really unfun and you really don't want to do it because, you'd much rather be actually researching. But if you just stick through it, through the boring times, you'll be much more organized and much happier for it in the long run. In the end, it doesn't really matter what answers I give for the questions, because as long as it works for me, it's totally okay. And that's, I think, how you have to look at organization. As long as whatever system you put in place is working, stick with it. Keep it. Don't change it. Why change something? And I hope you learned something from today's video on the basics of organization. If you have any questions or any suggestions for videos or things you'd like to see, I'd love to hear about it. Go ahead and leave a comment in the comments box below, and I'll be sure to get back to you on that and hopefully make your video. That's about it. So, thanks. Bye.